This Zoom is telling me. Okay, perfect. So you still hear me. Um, Anna, I know that you wanted me to preface this with an introduction about myself and whatnot. However, I'm more of a fan of the unilateral, of understanding what makes us all the same. Um, I try to really avoid a lot of these speaking engagements in the last little while, but for Anna, I consistently show up because I know that to her, you are not a tool of self-promotion, and you are not a tool of her trying to establish a brand. You're a tool of a legacy that she understands. So prior, I would like to I really thought about this because this is a topic that is very near and dear to me because I understand how the world is evolving. And at least I would like to preface this by saying these are my opinions. These have to do with my perception of the world, not anyone I work with or anything, but I'm a fan of honesty. Because if we can be honest with each other, then we can truly get to the root of what we're addressing. So I'd like to preface this by just some bullets I'd written down, not necessarily about my story or my self-promotion, whatnot. And then we can have a really open dialogue amongst each other to go from there. Because in this state of consciousness where we find ourselves, I focus more on trying to understand the nature of what it is to be a human being and not what it is to be a migrant. I feel that by calling yourself migrapreneurs, you're putting yourself in a box. As my core belief is in life, every human being is an entrepreneur. The only thing that is guaranteed is that you are born and that you will die. In that span of time between those two events, you will spend your life figuring out what is your meaning and what is your contribution to the overall state of consciousness. And consciousness itself doesn't happen just within you, life happens through you. So I'd like to start off by saying when Anna asked me and approached me, I usually now turn down as many speaking things as I can because I like to keep to myself. They asked me, what would you say your statement would be about? And I told them, I don't think it's really about a statement as much as my credence has always been about good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better than your best. It is better than the rest. The reason being is that in the position where most of you are, you cannot afford to be not at your top, at your peak. You can't afford to let it rest. You have to be operating at a high level. Now, I'm a big fan of history because to be able to help you, you need to understand the table at which you are eating. If you do not understand the table at which you are eating, you will not know how to navigate the players that you've invited to eat with you, right? And so I'm a fan of honesty, and I don't want all this, excuse me, this woke talk and saying I'm going to do this, this, and that. Because if you've ever been in a situation where there is a glass ceiling or there is a glass wall, words and corporate whitewashing or greenwashing, whatever it is they apply to you, do not help you feed your belly, and they do not help you help your family. So at the end of the day, I really always like to point at a point in history, which is after the 30 Years' War, which is we looked at, which was the era of enlightenment. The reason why is a lot of German philosophers also, they understood the toll that this kind of wars and whatnot took on them and on humanity around them. And they started to look at life, not existentially as, oh, this religion versus that, but at the case of humanism. I believe that today, more than anything, especially speaking to this crowd, I think that you are a crowd that can actually move the needle because we are really at a war today between humanism and then corporate, I would say, imperialism. The majority of you are migrant entrepreneurs, not by choice, but by need. That's why you have that title. And to me, when you look at anywhere through history, you are the victims of imperialistic doctrine. That's really the reality. Whether I say it any other way, I'm not here to whitewash it and to become friendly with corporate people. I explain this to you because one of the biggest things that I see, I'll give you an example. If you put black ants and red ants into a jar and you shake those ants, and those ants would live gladly together, but you shake that jar, they start to fight amongst one another because the black ants start thinking that the red ants are the ones causing the problems and vice versa. Your race, your gender, your sexuality, what your belief systems are, where you come from shouldn't matter. What matters most is the context of humanism and who you are as a human. The great Dr. Martin Luther King in 1963, his March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. If you really look into the indoctrination of Dr. King, one of his main things was he understood that race alone was not going to be a cause that could help everyone. He was in the process of migrating kind of his messaging to cover everyone. And he said something, and this is something that really hits home even more than anything today, that the poor white man who lives in a trailer park where he's not entitled there isn't making enough money. The poor, the woman of another gender, they are not being spoken on enough in our society. And that was the march for jobs and freedom. One of the biggest things behind it was unionizing and giving equal rights, equal opportunities to all people of all socioeconomic background, not just Black. That's something to understand. It's very key for me that you understand that you are not migrants, but you are entrepreneurs. The thing is that the world is changing so vastly. We currently have 40 million displaced people who are being, everybody, all these corporate companies want to talk about, oh, the environment and this and that. But what are they doing to help these people? And there will be more and more refugees as we move through time. Another one is a lot of these companies and a lot of this kind of wokeness around, okay, we have to eat better and sustain better. You have 2.7 billion people on Earth right now who are food insecure. So these issues are not going to be solved by a bunch of Nike commercials. They're not going to be solved by people changing their LinkedIn backgrounds and making their things Black to say they stand. At the height of the Black Lives Matter movement last year, we had $26 billion moved from corporate, but how did that money get distributed, right? I'm really setting the table here to understand, to really explain to you that it's very important, and why I align myself with Anna is, to her, you are not a tool of self-promotion. She understands that what you are doing is foundational for the future generations, and that to call you migrapreneurs is to alienate what you are doing for humanity. The key thing that I like to underline, there are people currently in Germany due to the rising housing costs that are living in garages. There are people who cannot afford even their state of living. And you're escaping one part of the world thinking that you're going to access freedom, but you are not defined, again, by your sexuality, your race, your belief, your religion. What we are starting to see is more of a militant approach to who you are in your social economic class. And so the things that plague you will begin and have already started to plague existing people in different parts of the world. I wanted to really lean into the writings of Dr. Cornel West or Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky would say, we're not looking for heroes, we are looking for good ideas. And on top of that, to really express freedom is to be able to allow people we despise to express themselves, even if we don't believe in their beliefs. The reason is, based on the eras of enlightenment, our job is to be able to sit at the table with many people of different backgrounds. Your job as an entrepreneur, fingers of a hand, win people over with your story, win people over with asset collection. The main thing you can do, feeling sad for me or this or that, there are going to be millions of your stories at this point in time. What we need to get good at is integrating into existing societies and controlling asset classes. That is how you gain a voice. We are in the era of technocrats, where just because somebody is a billionaire, we think they have the ability to shape policy. We think that they have good ideas. And sometimes when we go to do the right thing, we can make mistakes and not roll that back. And the problem with that is you cannot trust politicians. I got to be honest with you. The reason is that politicians will do things that serve their agenda, and they'll be too slow to the buck when billionaires are the ones financing what's going on. Not everyone is bad, but there's a war of balance here. What I'm trying to explain to you simply is, you are not a migrapreneur, you're an entrepreneur. Your main goal is, how are you going to live a good life, and how are you going to allow other people around you to live that life? And your cause should not just be reflective of your skin color, your gender, whatever story you have, but how you are able to build an asset class and share it. I believe in the future of technology, because as we move towards kind of decentralized money systems and cryptocurrency or whatnot, the reason behind imperialism is capitalism has been militarized and weaponized. Certain countries in the world have understood this and have now used advanced tactics in capitalism so that the West pick and choose their moments to be silent. I tell you this because myself and my experience as a Palestinian of what gets whitewashed as anti-Semitism, or what gets whitewashed in media as racism, where these are fundamental attacks on human rights. During the lockdown, I also sat there and had a lot of panic, because as a Muslim myself, right? I call my fellow Muslims brothers and sisters. I try to approach the world when it comes to business as that, because anybody in your position knows this is coming to save you. You have to put yourself in a position of power so that you can help others. That's why when Anna gives you that example, I always try to be a man of my community, not a man of social media. And the reason I tell you this is our quest for money and printing money, if money is infinite, this is why you are the victims of imperialism. There will always be banks that will finance corporate companies, and now military expansion has become part of that. The reason I'm telling you this is there will continue to be attacks on the middle class. There'll be attacks on you. Why I believe in cryptocurrencies, for example, just as an example of technology that you have the ability right now to invest yourselves in and to grab a stake in, regardless of where you are in your social economic class. Avoid this constant printing of money. If you have infinite money, you are looking for infinite value in capitalism, which will lead to infinite expansion and resources. What you have is you have the unfortunate nature that you were born into a place in the world that had resources or something that expansionist societies wanted. That's the reality. I see a lot of this, especially with Europe's reconciliation with colonialism, World War II and whatnot, and their inability. Corporate has created a new form of fascism. I'm telling you this, and I know I'm not going to have a lot of fans. I do this for Anna, and I'm very honest. The reason is when you militarize, and you militarize things to an extreme that you want to cancel people you don't agree with, or this or that, what happens is that is the ant concept. They are dividing and they are conquering you. To say, oh, these are gay rights issues, these are colored people, oh, he's a Palestinian, this and that. We all are in the same struggle for ownership, equity, and understanding. When I see the West is silent on certain issues, but allows current Holocaust, for example, that is what is occurring with certain people around the world to occur, and nobody says anything because it could have an impact on their corporate bottom lines, that is not civil action. And I will explain something to you. If a company is creating commercials and creating civil action around it, and it's too comfortable, it's not real. You will always, my mother, for example, comes from a generation that will tell me, be silent, be quiet, make sure you're taken care of. I even speak consistently to a therapist about this. When you see injustice, I am not programmed to live with that. I have to translate what my parents experienced to translate that into the same identity as somebody in a rural mainland where there's an expansionist society, or the native Indian, who their things were taken from them. And even today, we continue to subject them to things. We continue to subject certain genders to things. And the main thing is that what we've done is we've allowed corporates to militarize and the media to own certain narratives that white men are your enemy, that these people are your enemy. But let me explain something to you. If, for me, as a first generation immigrant to Canada, church groups, the Salvation Army, many white people did many things that were great to allow me to establish myself. Your color, your religion, and what you are is not a basis for who you are. It is a basis for your experience. And it's very key for me to underline this for you guys before we open, and women as well, excuse me, so that we can have an open, honest dialogue, because nobody is coming to save you. We have to take ownership. Why do I do a job platform? Why do I run this? Is because I believe that my job is to help people. I enjoy. I'm not just in this for money, because I understand the impacts that jobs have on people and their ability to climb the social ladder. I find it very funny that we talk about women empowerment, for example, in the West, but when a woman chooses to wear a hijab, we don't speak out on behalf of her. We don't, but that's her choice, but we label it because it's uncomfortable for corporates to speak about that. Currently, what is occurring with my sisters in India, with a heavy move towards nationalism, even our compatriot Noam Chomsky said about this. There are 200 and something plus million Muslims right now that are facing oppression there. There's oppression all over the world. You are the future of establishing tools, not what the narrative is right now of corporate entrepreneurs telling you I'm doing this, this, and that, and making it public. We need to own infrastructure, and we need to figure out ways to work together. The only way that you can move the needle away from technocrats, politicians did not rate in billionaires. The biggest enemies we have are billionaires that own platforms that spread misinformation about you. Billionaires who think they can talk to you about the environment, yet they are launching space rockets and they're going into space and causing more emission issues than anyone else. I want to underline this to you because money is at the heart of everything. When your buying class is dictated to be powerful, when you arrange and organize amongst each other, then we have power. That is the community. And so the goal is, how do we take all of our different tangents that we are on, the different projects, and combine them by the use of new technologies to increase our voice? That's what I wanted to focus on here. For the remainder of the session, I'm really open for you to ask me anything about my story, my perceptions, and what got me to this point. But the key for me is this, is that we understand that what might not be soup du jour right now for the rest of the world, and they're using you as token marketing, is going to become more and more prevalent in the years to come. As you have climate crises that will occur, you have food shortage crises that are now on the rise, and you have infrastructures of governments that are over expansionist extensions of imperialistic systems caused by capitalistic expansion. Once you are able to understand the game you are playing, then we can have an honest conversation about how we can help you get ahead. All right. And so to lastly wrap this up, my whole credence has been never wait on another man or woman to do something for me. But when I put myself on in a position, my job as a human being is to find good human beings that I can allow be the best versions of themselves. I now leave it for all of you to ask me anything you would like to ask me, and for us to have an honest, open conversation. And I thank you, Anna, for giving us this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo, for this and for sharing that insight. I would like to start, and the rest, please, raise your hand or just open the mic and let's have this conversation, because having an hour, but now it's will be 20 minutes more with Mo, trust me, it's a real privilege. So Mo, thank you so much really for taking this time. Mo, look, that I've been, I'm a big fan of trying to denounce what exists out there and what is not working. Something that I discovered with my first organization and now with Migrapreneur is that I got tired of being invited, of bringing the folding chair to the table. It is time for that table to be welcoming to all of us. So in that end, you mentioned the future of tech, and you mentioned a couple of things that I would like to pinpoint. But before we go there, I'm very particularly worried, and the reason why we want to highlight migrant entrepreneurs is because migrant entrepreneurs, they have been contributing to the economy for many years, not only in Germany, in the United States, elsewhere, but we do not have the visibility. And it's not that we want to be thanked, it's that there is a commonality in most of the migrant entrepreneurs, that the kind of entrepreneurship that people with migrant background are doing, regardless of what they're doing, if it's only full profit, it's always impactful. And right now, the future of tech and the future of where investment is going, they're investing, and that's what I would like to have your take on that. The new ways of investing and the new companies that are becoming unicorns in Berlin and elsewhere in Germany are using migrants to be the cheap labor. And I want to have your take on that, because your company, your tech company, is about that. You help companies to resource and to bring talent. How can we continue supporting, and how we can bring this and leverage to investors at the end of the day, who are continuously looking into business models and are not caring about migrants continue being the talent that is sustaining these companies. And just to finish, in one of these, and this is not, I don't aim to attack a very specific company with this, but there is the former Minister of Communications right now is riding a bike in Leipzig, bringing food to different places. And that cannot continue happening.
So if I may,
Yes.
the number one thing I'd like to underline to you is we're living in the era of corporate greed. The evolution, we really didn't learn much from Enron, the Enron scandal years ago. We've evolved and we've become more complicit, because many people right now, what you are seeing in the marketplace is a smash and grab of money, and people are collecting assets. As what's happening is we are having a digital shift. What you see with migrants right now, and there are a lot of people in talent acquisition and whatnot that are very lazy. They're giving umbrella answers to everything, where you'll hear them say, oh, the great resignation. This is applicable to America because America's worker rights have been terrible. They didn't give a lot of, I would say, insurance, healthcare, and these benefits. And people are like, why am I working as a slave? Second, the reason why I started this telling you you are really the victims of imperialism is what you see here is a modern form of imperialism, which is this is ultra capitalism where we look for a technocrat to say, I am a unicorn. We are in the rush to build as Europeans unicorns to show the success and the ability to grow, but at what cost? At what cost did you build an empire? The reason is that migrants right now are used because of their cheap labor and their inability to access jobs, right? These companies, though, this is something that is occurring, it's called the Great Automation. Within the next 10 years, as soon as robots can actually replace these migrants, where you need humans to currently do the job, they will be replaced. But what I'm trying to underline is it's not a migrant problem only. It's a problem that touches everyone. And that's the key, is that the reason why you see statistically also, a lot of the founders, even one of the Google founders is a migrant. Great, a lot of great founders are migrants, right?
But this is, well, we will talk about that and why we want to make a difference, but yeah.
No, I will get into this really clearly. The reason I tell you this is that migrants go through a lot to even survive every day. And you know your story. Behind every great fighter, behind every great athlete is a great story. That's what builds you. But the reality is this, right? Is these companies need to be called out and you need to become militant essentially in your ways. I'm really sorry to say this. But when we allow companies, if you guys all band together and build a community, just like there is woke people canceling people for certain things. Like one of the things that hurt me the most is you can agree and not agree. In a democracy, you don't have to agree with people. And for example, Corona has created this divide. I'm originally Canadian and I'm a proud Canadian. I will die for Canada. But our prime minister to be lazy and just call people and label them racists in the last few weeks, just to call them racist, which isn't, okay, that's a blanket argument. Now I don't want to listen to what you have to say. Or in Germany, we call people Querdenker, who might not agree with vaccines. When I'm fully vaccinated, everything. But I'm just saying people are allowed to have this discourse. The reason I'm telling you this is that you need to unite and create a platform. I remember I discussed this with you, Anna, a few years ago and told you content is what motivate people. But your content should not be content about victimization because people don't care. What will happen is the corporate engine will take that, they will package it to make money off of it. What you have to do, one of the coolest companies I would say come out of Berlin is Share the Meal, for example. In Islam, we have this term about halal, and my Israeli brothers and sisters, or excuse me, my Jewish brothers and sisters will tell you kosher. The actions you do, are they clean, and what are the byproducts of them? How they do this. The power is really in your hands because now the middle class and people are starting to understand it's becoming harder for us to assemble and gather wealth. So you have to shift your narrative from, hey, we're victims and we're getting abused here to, hey, think about you guys aren't going to have a job in the next years. That's why the real companies that are winning, there are also other companies that have delivery jobs, but they've already integrated systems of uptraining and reskilling to work their employees up. The majority of the problems, I can also tell you from my father, who sacrificed his life because he studied as a surgeon in Germany. And when he went to Canada, they didn't, in the early 90s, they didn't identify his surgical studies. They told him you'd have to start all over again. Right? So it's the same thing. A lot of you are very much trained, but how do you break down glass walls in society? And how do you get access? The only thing for me and for all of us, I think we can all agree on this. We've all had to do things that made us highly uncomfortable. And that's what makes you great entrepreneurs, to be honest, because you're willing to do the dirty things, the things that you don't want to do to get access. And unfortunately, Anna, the reality of the matter is, and I'm not here to sugarcoat anything, we need to take these jobs because it's not politicians here sugarcoating it. It's the only way we can access the money systems and that we can earn and be legal contributors to the current society. So what it does is I am a fan of unionization. And y'all should push these unions and you should push these things because that creates accountability and it creates a standard. I hope that kind of answered your question, because if you do not band together and show that your struggle, there's no difference between the migrant doing the biker job and the Berliner who grew up in a small part of Berlin who could no longer afford living in the city that might not have the education and also has to do that job. There's no difference. The difference is how do you get access? Is that you struggle to get access, whereas they're not probably as, how would we say, as forthcoming with their ability to get access.
And speaking of which, access is one thing that I would like to pick on. Emal, I don't know, Emal, if you would like to make that question, because I think it's also related to your answer, Mo, which is, Emal, would you like to do it, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I can say, because an interesting question is why do you all, I mean, everybody has political opinions, but the way you try to get ahead is by starting a business, right? And not trying to get like a, I don't know, starting to work for the Bürgeramt or whatever, right? So what makes that choice?
So, if I may, what your question, let me rephrase the question so everybody can hear it, is what do you think about the thesis migrant groups want to make it should stick to business and stay out of politics? In other words, no disadvantaged groups has ever advanced through political leaders. That's actually not correct. And let me explain that to you. I believe that you have to run through phases like a butterfly. The number one thing is why I kicked this off by explaining that you are a victim of imperialism is imperialism has now flowed its way into politics. When billionaires and private companies are funding political campaigns, and when political campaigns tell you certain things matter because they are comfortable to matter, but don't speak on the same issues in other cultures because it can affect them and they're uncomfortable, this is weaponized politics. The thing I will tell you is whether the Chinese, right? The Chinese in America, when they came, they were used and abused to build the railroads. The same came with the Italian and the Irish immigrants. It comes with every wave. What you have to do, even the Polish immigrants that came into Chicago and all over, what you have to do is band together. What I see is a new form of racism, for example, where in the West, everybody loves watching the show Narcos or whatnot. And they talk about Mexicans and Colombians like they're drug traffickers. And the music industry is making millions off of this positioning, where drug trafficking is a byproduct of expansionist imperialism. Okay. And these people have to do this because that is their job. We have a paranoia. We label China like China's the ultimate enemy. I don't agree with what they're doing with my Uyghur brothers and sisters, but I know why, essentially based on their global position, they do this. But to constantly have a paranoia, I'll give you an example. China went to Jamaica 3-4 times to do development projects. Jamaica said, no. The Chinese didn't invade them. They didn't do anything there. The goal is this, you have to, and this is why I started this, and I encourage you, I thank you, Amal, for having the brave, for having the soul, right, to ask that question, because you have to be brave to ask such a question openly, is first, you have to do what every special interest group has done. If the LGBTQ community never united and really created a powerful lobby, they would still be getting undermined until today. Our ability, what I'm trying to explain to all of you, is our ability to not be those ants, to say what is affecting this, the woman here, what is affecting the Black man, the Chinese, the Arab. These things are meant to divide and take the power away from us to unite. Our ability is first to create business, because our business is what gives us buying power, and that is wealth and ownership. And when you have that, then we can sponsor and run political parties. As you know, Kennedy was assassinated, but who elected him were really, what really were the unions, the Italians, and the Irish. So you need to come together. And the better we come together as communities, our ability to assemble wealth, it makes us more powerful with politicians. That's why I don't believe in politicians, because the majority of the time they are giving you lip speech while I watch people around me get poorer and poorer. I hope that answers your questions.
We have another question, Mo, and that's related to Moubarak. Perhaps you can share a little bit more about, share just quickly what Moubarak does and how Moubarak, as part of the company that you're part of, it's tackling things that you mentioned, like climate change and food security and others.
That's a good question. The first thing is to be able to, what we've been trying to really do here, and what we've been doing, is first changing the standard for what applicants are, right? When we came in first in the business, we said no cover letters, save the time, but it was also to kind of filter people out, really make people merit-based and based on their interactions, and really to create a system that, I'm not perfect. That's the first thing. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not doing enough. I'll tell you this. But the reality is what I do as a man is I don't put my stuff publicly. When I reach out to people like Anna, there's a lot of people I reach out to and I don't want to put their names out there. And man, it's not to put it on social media. I'm a man of God. I believe that I die, I will meet my maker, and that I will be asked, what did you do in your community? And my thing was also in the job marketplace is really pushing these things of uptraining, reskilling, and access to jobs. Do you know how many people I see go on stage and talk about diversity, but reject candidates and tell me there's too many Indian candidates coming in, or there are too many candidates in this part of the world coming in? I know this. I see this. Do you know, I also see the statistical facts of my sisters who are Muslim sisters, when they wear a hijab, the likeliness of them actually getting job callbacks are, right? Europe is very interesting to me because we want to be woke, yet we, like France, for example. France in their high fashion, in Fashion Week a few weeks ago, they brought up everybody's wearing balaclavas, yet they're banning the hijab. There are areas of extremism. I believe in life, it's not black or white, there's gray. But France has a gold reserve that is pretty much built off of Mali. And they have all these resources that are related to their colonial past. Yet they love Muslims when they're winning them World Cups, but they have a problem with them when they're a part of their society and they're asking for equal right. That's the reality. And what the president has done, what he's done right now, is that he's tried to create what we are in is we're in the era of nationalism right now, because people want to feel proud where they are, and that gives them security. But to create internal enemies based on your past history isn't a solution. And this is why I tell people that the best way to become powerful in these imperialistic systems, right? You got to be brave and you got to call it what it is. That's why I don't do a lot of these sessions. And I know when a lot of these companies are using you to whitewash your message, to look woke, is that you have to call it for what it is. And when you see injustice, you cannot be for injustice for Muslims or injustice for women and then alienate white men and then alienate somebody else. You have to see it as across the line, the same problem. And that's what I started by speaking about Dr. Luther King. And you have to see about why the CIA assassinated his mother. They assassinated him because he was a threat to these systems. The systems are the problem, but to address these systems, capitalism is actually beautiful, to be real with you, because it rewards you for your participation. I'm not pushing socialism or anything like that. I'm just telling you the way to control those levers of capitalism is how you work together as a community. And to understand, oh, this guy's doing something in payments, I'm gonna buy from him. Oh, she's doing something here. Her solution might be in recruitment. I don't know, in legal. I'm buying specifically from her. And that's how you unite. Put money in the pockets of people. As you grow your companies and you grow who you are, buy from one another and be purposeful in that. And that will make you more powerful. Work as a hand, not fingers, is what I'm trying to underline.
You mentioned also blockchain, unless somebody else would like to jump in another question, because we need to wrap up. This happens every month. Join us. Every month we have a friend, a mentor, another migrant entrepreneur doing things and great things like Mo. But Mo, you were mentioning about blockchain, and this is something very interesting because recently I had a conversation with a company in the United States. And you know that there's one big thing about getting access to money, getting access to investment. And I want to clarify this, since not even among migrants, not even among us, everybody comes from the same sector, right? Not everybody will be taken in the same way. So we were discussing about blockchain and how the main question here is, what do you think would be the best way to empower people who are starting businesses to look into blockchain as a possible way for, you know, investing in themselves and finding money for themselves? What's your take on that? And especially when you mention blockchain and the future of tech.
So that's a good question. Number one is that we need to see what the evolutions are in our society. Things like the metaverse and whatnot are still, I find them to be anti-humanistic. And I find these to be ways that Facebook is covering up their failures. To be honest, they're not going to make an impact anytime soon. You also have to be able to understand when adoption of technology is happening, there is a lot of noise. However, I really believe in open ledgers. I believe in creating a society where you can see how the money is flowing, because this will weaken special interest groups. Do you know why the media is really scared right now? Because any one of you could start a YouTube channel and find a messaging, and you will take away from these major, these are extensions, and Malcolm X told you, be careful with this media. Because they will have you hating somebody that is not your enemy. And they're scared of you and they want to take that power away from you, because the technology is giving you the ability now to build your own platform and have people follow you for what you say and who you are. And that scares them. But the blockchain is really cool because you will have ownership of end to end and you will be able to work with one another. I always look at technology right? And I look at everything in life as what's the price of participation? How much do I need to pay to get involved? And the reason why I believe in these technologies, at least when you look deep into it, cryptocurrencies, I believe that 95% of them are frauds, even NFTs. Like I believe in the futures of NFTs as we start to go to more to a digital world and whatnot and the assets. But I believe that this whole thing of the blockchain and certain cryptocurrencies, for example, I'm kind of bullish on things like Ripple that actually have a utility. And right now, as it grows, they will go through their issues. But you have to look at how can I use, and this is something I speak to many companies about. Not just, I explain this all the time, is what is the digital native imperative? So what scares me is not the competitor in my face. Yeah, to me, the way I'm programmed, yeah, enemy, whatever, is the person sitting in a room today and saying, well, most business works like this, but if I combine this stack here, maybe Snapchat like this, I put it at the Google form like that, and they build a smart stack, how do they build my business better? Those are and blockchain I see is that being a really great access for you guys to understand where the money is coming from, what the person's history is like, and really just get access to this funding. But to me, really the thing about the blockchain is for you to own your own platform. And a lot of these technocrats are scared of the internet 3.0. And that's why Jack Dorsey will tell you, no, it's just a hype or this or that, because he's scared that's going to take away from his power base. How can you use these technologies and how do they help you advance? Two things. One, your mission and vision, and two, your cooperation with one another. So that A, the blockchain is the ultimate way of really saying, hey, put your money where your mouth is. I'm saying, I told you, in Black Lives Matter, we saw at the height of the movement, we saw $26 billion move from corporate America and from corporate. Where did it go? What happened with it? Is it touching the people? Is it touching the people in the core communities? Some people think making a few commercials and doing some LinkedIn posts is the thing. But like I said, all over Germany, even here, they have the same issues. This is why I recommend look, I'm going to say something very controversial right now. The Nazi and the far right that you were born to hate and you're told, hey, he hates you and he doesn't like you, suffers from the same radicalism comes from oppression. And they have a lack of access to jobs and participation. And if we keep alienating these people and now people have different identity, like different ideas than us, they're going to radicalize. And they're going to cause the same issues that led you to leave your countries. And so imperialism is behind all this. And this is why I tell you, the blockchain, these technologies that allow us to build new companies smart, but allow us to interact with each other in a smart way and really track the flow of money. One of the biggest frauds I've ever seen in my life was the UN Food for Oil program from Iraq. If you look on how that money was spent and stolen, I love it. I love all these woke things, but I've watched policy for years. Like I see it all over the world, and that's the thing. The main thing is now is this gives us a technology, and even Elon Musk, somebody shot a tweet. I'm not an Elon Musk fan, to be honest. I'm not a fan of this whole scam behind green cars. When we can have an offline conversation around this and this wokenism around human life. But the whole thing he said, somebody said, hey, why don't you sell Tesla stock and end hunger? He said, well, if you put it on a ledger, I'll do it. So using these technologies to advance your purposes, I'm all for it. And I don't see the access of participation to be too much. But what I will also tell you is do not alienate people. I'll tell you, the majority of the people who put me on in life and put me in a position that I could play the game, white men. The people that society will tell you are your enemy. The people will tell you they're keeping you down. Different cultures, different fingers of the hands. We all think, we all behave differently. Is how do I get them to buy into me? And their participation in me as a foreign thing to them, because I didn't come from their environment, will take longer. That's normal. But they put me on. But these people still have access to these things, and they predominantly who handles the wealth. That's the reality. I tell you, don't focus so much on race. See what their track record is and leverage this technology. I think traditional funding methods, people are understanding the issues of capitalism. And so they are adopting how they invest. So don't just shift just to blockchain. I feel like you have to have a pie, divide it up with different cuts, and try everything, really. You're not in a position to be picky, is what I want to underline here.
I have one question, and I would like to have another one because we're closing. This is meant to be just 1 hour. Darik, am I pronouncing your name correctly? And
yeah,
I'm sorry if I'm not.
All good. It's Darek. Yeah, I do have a question. And I agree with what you're saying that blockchain technology can actually really make a big of a difference in our communities and so on. But we also have to agree the fact that it's really far from being extremely user friendly, and the adoption rate within migrants isn't really very high. However, how are we going to be? How do you think you're going to be transitioning when you look at companies like Binance, Solano, Flow, Polkadot, where the company says they decentralized, but they're not decentralized when more than 50% or a third of the company is still owned by VCs and insiders. And people are like more trusting towards these than any new one that comes around. And like you mentioned earlier, like 90% of them could be scams, and you're right. However, the trusted ones are still a centralized company. So you can see the gap between that and the same thing goes for NFTs. It's a scam, but it could solve the entire IP issue in the entire global south. So there's still that big gap in between of understanding user friendliness and centralized. So there's all those. So basically the stuff that we're still overcoming in this capitalistic society that you mentioned still got carried over to this decentralized world. So what is your take on that?
So that's a really that's a really profound and question. The one thing I'll tell you is this, right? With the proliferation of the internet after the dot-com boom, a lot of us lost access. We didn't have the ability to access the technology, right? Because development and people coding and this and that. But I believe that our younger generations now, and y'all are more versed in using technology. I don't have all the answers, but what I will tell you is to participate, understand it, and look at how you can embed it into your causes, because it's a great way to scale and move. Look, if people are selling just pictures,
Oh, you go.
yeah, sorry, accidentally muted. If people are selling pictures with no real utility behind them, imagine the power of you putting a utility of your cause and putting it on a piece of technology. I also agree. Nothing is perfect. That's why I preface that. But I'm telling you, the access to these technologies that will define the future. And that's why I want you to think sharp, think bigger picture, is how am I going to get a seat at the table? Where Anna called it a folding seat, where we in the past, as different people of different migrational backgrounds, where they became powerful is because they unified with each other and they cut out middlemen that own things between them. Like I tell you, the diasporas, all of your diasporas that exist around the world, if you guys put them on one unified platform, you cut out all the middlemen and all these banks that could control whatever, and you do to this, whatever you do with each other, use the technology for your gains and your purposes, not for what it's currently being used for, if that makes sense. But I totally agree with you, Dark. I'm not saying 100% go in this direction, but I'm saying understand the price of participation rather than missing the boat, and this participation of us finding a way to work together. And if we can buy from each other and we can unify with each other and our ledgers are all there and we can see what people are, I'm not a fan of what you show, what you tell me. I'm a fan of what you show me. And if we're able to push that narrative, then I believe we'll become stronger.
Can I just add 2 cents to that?
Yes, for sure.
I think there's also needs to be a little bit of a focus on if you already have the access and you have the ability to get in.
Man. Yes.
Also focus on the ability to also raise the socioeconomic status of the people within
100.
your communities, whether basically the migrant countries, because like if you look at the blockchain doesn't have borders, so then there's a lot of ways to actually connect it back home and raise those. So once you have more people having more money, you have more access and you'll be able to do a lot more.
100% Derek, and I love this because it's the perfect way to wrap it. That's why I started this conversation by telling you, you are not a man of color. It's not a woman. It's not in sexuality, this is that. Take your cause, break down the walls, and leverage this technology to do that ownership, because then you will have buying power, and then you will be able to circumvent companies and people like Anna will tell you, you have a foreign minister delivering, we know what company is, on a bike, and nobody sees the value at that company of moving this man up, okay? But if you had the power and you and your communities and you get more people, the weakness is if people start believing, oh, this is just a Palestinian problem. Oh, this is just an Indian. It's a Pakistani problem. Oh, this is just a problem here and there. No, it's a problem for all of us. And so if we are able to unite and create these types of infrastructures that create accountability and create exchange between one another, and see myself previously what it's been, it's just how Anna will tell you how I found her and how I find other people. I look I'm a bread researcher. And so I look in the market, I look at people, what they're doing. When Anna came out, okay, I'm gonna share with you guys an anecdote here, just so you know. When Anna came out here with her migrapreneur thing, it was like soup du jour in Germany. There was a lot of people who made money off of just selling the image and selling you out. Yeah, we're helping. Then they were creating boat parties with all these things, this and that, and they're using the funding. And these people, where are they today? They're all on the next hype, which is crypto, this, that. Meanwhile, Anna has been eating, excuse it, she's been eating dirt for years, just to bring you guys and continue to believe in this platform and to make people care. And you would have to really understand the politicians who did her dirty and this and that just to advance their own agenda, but don't show up. And I explain this to you because these politicians, they're big men when they're dealing with Anna, and they bully, and they're arrogant. But when it comes to companies who will keep them in power, they're little pussycats. And that's the reality. And so the reality is that you guys have to look at how can we use these technologies to give us power to fight this imperialism, this extension of capitalistic imperialism. And once you understand that, then you will become very powerful. And then you will have not a folded seat at the table. And just like my Chinese brothers and sisters did in the West, the Irish, the Polish, even the Jews, all these people who are cyclical, even the Indians that migrated to Western Canada helped build it. All these people who are really demonized and they were subjugated to abuse until they built their communities up to the point that they had enough voter and buying power can no longer be neglected. And so that's on us. And one thing you said, Tariq, is that should be, I tell you, that for me is I'm a man of God and I don't have a shame in saying it. It's part of my duty is that if I'm eating and I see somebody starving near me, regardless of their credence, regardless of their hate for me, my job is to serve my creator and say, look, eat too. And we have to find, as Noam Chomsky says, the ability to hate, to love, people who hate us. Because if we oppress them and we push them into a corner, we will radicalize this left. Fascism is known as a thing of the right becoming extreme, but in today's world of this extreme woke, the left has become radicalized and they use your causes as reasons to take out their enemies. So I want you to understand the weapons that are being used. Thank you. Thank you all.
I want to be conscious of the time and to everybody. Firas, do you want to say something? No. I saw that you wanted to say something, sorry. No, it's okay. So being conscious of the time for all of you, essentially because we want these always to be kept in 1 hour. We always come together 1 hour, once a month to discuss about things. If you're not keeping up the discussion, you can also join our community. And I just want to wrap up and I want to pick up 2 words and 2 important things about this. Buy from each other. There's no better way to support people who are starting their careers, their project, the business, but supporting each other. And last but not least, the power of community. If we really support each other, we can always make it. And I'm here because of people like Mo, and I'm here because of people like Firas, who I also met back in the days, and from all of you who are joining the community. And you know, because the ones who are part of the Slack, you know how many times people reach out for personal questions and for personal crisis situations, because we're there for everybody. And last but not least, I would like to say to Matula, who I'm really happy that you joined, because although you're not in Germany right now, I just want to tell you once again, you're not alone, because for all the Matulas who joins and who asks and for all who are always reaching out to us saying, how can we do what is happening in Germany? What can we do? We live in a country that still we have a lot of privilege, even as migrants. Here we have completely different situations than many others in other places. And I always am grateful that people like Matula and so on always reach out and try to replicate what we're doing there as a way of supporting and as a way of having hope. So Matula, I hope that you got to learn from us. I know that many of the things that we said today, of course, applies to our current living, so might not apply to where you are, but I can tell you that there's hope. And here there's a community that even if you're not here, you can always count on us. And maybe hopefully one day you can come to Germany and also joining us in this conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Anna, and it means a lot. Very happy to be part of this community.
Yes. Mo, my pleasure, and thank you, everybody. See you all in 1 month. Next month, we're gonna be very outspoken about this folding chair that many of us women still don't are welcoming yet. But we need to make the fight. Thank you so much, Mo, for everything.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.